we surrender all. God, we surrender all to you, God. God, this is a day of surrender. God, all our thoughts and all our dreams, God, all our plans, God, our will. Father, you said in your word that we were bought with a price, that we do not belong to ourselves, oh God. And so, God, we just surrender to you. Father God, we're going to give you a new yes today. We're going to say yes to your will. We're going to say yes to your perfect will for our lives today. God, we surrender it all, God. We surrender it today, oh God. Father, we ask that you let the Holy Spirit reveal to us anything that we're holding on to, that we refuse and that we have an issue with releasing to you, oh God. Father God, we ask that you even now reveal the hurts and the pain, oh God, where we build up a wall, where we build up a stronghold, and we even refuse to allow you to touch the pain in our life, God. So God, we're going to trust you, oh God. We're going to let down our guard, oh God. We're going to open up our hearts today, God. We're going to let you touch the painful spots in our lives, oh God. We're going to let you touch the pain of betrayal. We're going to let you touch the pain of disappointment. We're going to let you touch those areas, oh God, to where we thought you wasn't there and we thought you didn't care. But God, we know that you are merciful and that your love and your mercy endure forever, oh God. So Father, we tear down those walls. We tear down those strongholds. Father God, we open up our spirit before you, oh God. The things that are in secret, we will shed the light on those things, oh God, and let you come in and heal our broken hearts, to heal our wounds, to heal us, oh God. And Father, we just give you honor. God, we just thank you because you are the one who provides, you are the one who heals, God. And so, God, we thank you right now. Every emotional hurt, every spiritual hurt, every physical hurt, every friendship hurt, every relational hurt, every hurt, God, we trust, oh God, that when you touch it, you will heal it, oh God. Some of them are still tender. Some of the wounds are still painful. But God, we trust and believe you, God. And we thank you, oh God. We thank you, oh God. We thank you, oh God. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, good morning. My name is Les, and I'll be your pulpit conductor for today. We want to welcome you to Center of Attraction, where Jesus is the center of it all. He really is. He is the center of it all. You know, my son and I, we talk about the Word, and we always agree before we get going that the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed, and it all points to Jesus. Everything points to Jesus. And then the second thing we always agree on before we debate the Word or whatever the situation might be is that it's all about Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Because without the crucifixion, the death, the burial, and the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ, we're doing this all for nothing. But He rose again, my God. And He rose again, and so we can get up because He got up. And so we thank the Lord. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Amen. So if you would please stand as we do our vision today. Our vision. Center of Attraction's vision is to be the best training and evangelistic ministry in the world. Our mission, Center of Attraction exists for the purpose of glorifying the name of Jesus through worship, Christian discipline, and the proclaiming of the gospel. Kind of place it, a progressive and prosperous place, a place of worship to our God, an apostolic and prophetic place. A place of community and international outreach, a place exploding in growth. And what did Jesus say in John 12:32? And I, if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. So what do we want to do here in this house? Lift him up, lift him up, lift Jesus up. Hallelujah. We thank you, Lord. that you were lifted up to reign on high. Hallelujah. When you said it was finished, you cast judgment on the world. And so, God, we just give you honor and we give you glory in Jesus' name. And you know, I'm going to be honest, when we first got here, we read those scriptures, and I didn't understand it because I only saw the one revelation. Because after you read that part, Jesus said, if I be lifted up from the earth, I'll draw men unto me. The Bible immediately said that he was speaking of his crucifixion. And so, I'm thinking, are we saying crucify him? But now, through our apostle, our prophetess, amen, praise the Lord, there's another revelation that's being shared. And so, the revelation is that he was lifted up to reign. He was lifted up to be king. He was lifted up. He went through crucifixion so that he can reconcile the heaven and the earth back to the Father. So now we can lift him up. Hallelujah. We can lift him up. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So I praise the Lord for some more revelation. Amen. While I read the word, and I'm going to read all of Psalms 146. And the Bible reads, praise ye the Lord. Praise the Lord, O my soul. While I live, will I praise the Lord. How many of you guys know a dead man can't praise the Lord? I will sing praises unto my God while I have any being. Put not your trust in princes, nor the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. He said, ain't no help in people. His breath goeth forth, he returneth to his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish. Happy is he that hath the God of Jacob for his help, whose hope is in the Lord his God, which made heaven and earth, the sea and all that therein is, which keepeth truth forever, which executeth judgment for the oppressed, which giveth food to the hungry. The Lord looseth the prisoner. The Lord opened the eyes of the blind. The Lord raised them that are bowed down. The Lord loveth righteous. The Lord preserveth the stranger. He relieveth the fatherless and widow. But the way of the wicked he turneth upside down. The Lord shall reign forever, even thy God, O Zion, until all generations. Praise ye the Lord. So God, we come before you, oh God, and we're going to do what your word says to do. We're going to praise you, God. We're going to give you a sacrifice of praise today. It doesn't matter by what we feel, but it only matters by what we believe, and we believe the word of the Lord. So God, we thank you, and we shall praise you in this place today. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
exhortation from the Lord. Listen closely. We who are believers are not just to live alone. We're to live in the overflow. We're not to live like others are living. We are to live in the overflow. So when we sing this song, you're going to imagine your overflow. What does your overflow look like? And you're going to confess today in the presence of your enemies, I'm living in the overflow. You can't just be a missionary, person, ambassador representing Christ without the overflow. And this is what Jesus said. So before you go and represent me, stop by the upper room and get you some overflow. So that when your peace runs out, his peace kicks in. When your joy runs out, his joy kicks in. The overflow. Say the overflow. Let's do it. I'm living in the overflow. I'm living in the overflow. Everybody say, I'm living in the overflow. I'm living in the overflow. I want you to imagine your overflow. I'm living in the overflow. I'm living in the overflow. It looks good, doesn't it? Living. I'm living in the overflow. I'm living in the overflow. My body's healed, my mind is set. I'm living in the overflow. I'm living in the overflow. My finances are running over. I'm living in the overflow. I'm living in the overflow. There is no door that can be closed that God won't open. I'm living in the overflow. I'm living in the overflow. I'm living in the overflow. The abundant life God has given me. I'm living in the overflow. 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 Overflow. I'm living in the overflow. I'm living in the overflow. So Father, right now we claim our overflow, our abundant life. Say, I claim my overflow. My abundant life. I will no longer settle for mediocrity and average and just enough. But I today move across my place of fear. My place of fear into my place of favor. In the name of Jesus. I will never be without. I will never lack. I will never worry. I will never stress. Because I'm living in more than enough. My overflow. My overflow. I want you to imagine it. I want you to receive it now. I want you to imagine it. I want you to receive it now. Come on now. I want you to press your imagination faith button and get on out there. Jump into the deep of that which God always says yes to. Say with me, I will not say no to God's yes. Come on now, I will not say no to God's yes. All of his promises are yes and amen. I'm living in the overflow. I'm living Watch me bring light. Watch me create, discover. Watch me show you the way. Watch me whirl it away. And watch me come in strong, says the Lord. I have considered you this morning, says the Lord. I considered you. And I have accepted your decree. Now, walk in what I have died for. Walk in what I have raised for. Walk in that I overlook and oversee. It is yours. It is yours. It is yours. It is yours. It is yours, says the Lord. It is yours. It is yours. It is yours. Now by faith, you want to walk into it. Come on, do that walk of faith. Take a couple steps. I'm moving into my large place. I'm moving into my large. I'm not looking back. I'm not going to complain. I hear the Lord telling me to tell you, stop your complaining about what you don't have and start your considering of what I've already given. It's our ignorance that keeps us where we are. It's our lack of knowledge. God has already given it to you. Somebody say, it's mine already. It's mine. It's mine. We're not going to backslide on this now this morning. We're not going to backslide. We're not going to backslide. I already texted you in devotion this week. We ain't backsliding. We're going on now. I command such a discomfort in your life. I command such a discomfort, such a level of frustration that you've got to move. That you have to leave your place of average so you can enter into a great place. Imagine it, remember it, plan it, process it, and accept it, possess it. Amen. We ain't poor. We're not struggling people. We're not indecisive. We're not depressed. We're not backwards folk. God has delivered us from that. Don't you backslide and go back to that mentality. Don't you go back to that mentality. You're worried. You're complaining. This is what I kept hearing all week. My people complain too much, is what I heard from the Lord. Because complaint shrouds and blinds you from what God has already done. And that which is about to do. He's up to something, my God, right now. You got to learn how to, this is why prophetess was trying to get us to enter in to the dance. What you dancing for? Some of us dancing by faith. I just know it's coming. I'm dancing right now in advance. I'm praising the Lord. Come on, y'all. Somebody give the Lord a shout. I'm praising the Lord right now for what's to come. Hallelujah. I want y'all, I'm done after this. I feel the free license of the Holy Spirit to tell you, you got to do something radical this week. Do something radical this week now. disturb your atmosphere. Because if the devil wanted to kill you, he would have killed you already. You're just so predictable. So predictable. Do the same thing all the time. The same time. God is looking. Let me say it like this. God ain't in your average. You won't find him. You will not find him in your average. You will not find him in your loader bar, in your limited, cramped living. We're in prison and we don't even know it. And it's a shame. But I refuse to be bound. I refuse to be captivated. I refuse to be depressed. I refuse to be rejected and dejected. I refuse. Somebody said, well, I'm the best I could ever be right now. You are a lie. I rebuke you right now in Jesus' name. Acting like you dead. Say, I'm not retiring. I'm refiring. Hallelujah. So you're gonna get those journals back out again. You're gonna get that dream chart back out again. And you're going to begin to rediscover. You're going to begin to reclaim. You're going to begin to restore. You're going to begin to renew. You're going to begin to revive. Again, vive means life. I'm going to re-life myself in Christ again. Yes, I am. Hallelujah. Can I get a witness from somebody? In Jesus' name. And so let living begin. Tell your neighbor, let your living begin. In the overflow. In the overflow. I end with this. Everybody crying. Everybody complaining that Lazarus is stinking. Don't do it. Don't roll that stone away now. This is a stinky situation. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I mean, it's odorous. We all know it, so there's complaining all around Jesus. There's fear. There's this mentality that it's over with me now. It's over with our family. If you would have been here, Jesus, my brother would not have died. So they already put a period on it. It's a done deal. There is no hope. There is no promise. There is no more opportunity. But here comes Jesus on the scene. I'm talking to somebody right now. And he says, here's my point, roll the stone away. Can't you just see some folks say, well, I got to see this because he's already dead. My marriage already dead. My family already dead. My finances already dead. My dream is already dead. He keeps speaking to me. I'm dead. And Jesus says, bring him out. Loose him and let him go. God, I'm going to prophesy that over somebody. What does he say? Loose this world, that stuff off of him. After that, he began to come out and walk with the living. All right. Say, I need to walk with the living. Well, I love to repent. I need some of y'all to repent with me right now. Don't worry about you singing, playing, nothing like that. If anything I said by the Holy Ghost touched you, and you know, I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. I'm pinching, I've already pinched the figure off of the coin. I've been living what I think my life should be. Some of us are living in a disobedience right now. Because God already told you some things you haven't done yet. You come to the altar now. You tell the Lord, we're going to sing some more, but you just need to come and repent right now. Tell the Lord you're sorry. Tell the Lord you're looking for a new you, help you with a new you. He'll do it now. He'll do it now. The Lord is not coming back for a broke down, disgusted, busted, struggling church. He's coming for a church. No fear, no doubt. In Jesus' name, do it for your people.
Hallelujah. 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 Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength, and they shall mount up with wings as eagles, and they will run and not get weary. They'll walk and not faint. God said you can do it. I'm going to strengthen you to do it, because you can do all things through Christ that strengthens you. He said, I give you another chance to turn it around, because great is my faithfulness. My faithfulness is new every morning. So I want you to see fresh start, new beginning,
Say, I'm going to live. I'm not going to die. I'm going to declare the works of the Lord. I'm going to live. 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 God bless you. God bless you. Make it right with your God. The purpose of praise and worship is to have us center in on what God is saying to us. And the Bible says it's line upon line, it's precept upon precept. The singing the word. Now we're going to sing another song. And God may have another word. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, saints. Amen. Sometimes our suffering is self-inflicted. God has nothing to do with it. It's self-inflicted. And God is saying, stop your suffering. Well, that's what I can really hear from God. I can really see God when I'm suffering. That's not the overflow. Somebody say pow. That's what I just saw in the spirit. Just the atomic, the bomb of God just bursting in this place. You're free to go. We're free to live. Say, I'm free to live. Now you decide how you want to live, but let me tell you like I feel it, baby. You're looking at a man on the move. Y'all hear me, nephew? It's for us who will not move with God, will not increase. Let's sing a song. Y'all can stay seated, sing if you won't stand, because we're free today. I had to stop you from playing drums and come on, y'all, let's worship the Lord. Let's worship the Lord. Stand and kneel, lay prostrate, straight. However you want to do it, let's worship the Lord. He's worthy.
we acknowledge you more than your titles, God. We call on the name of Yahweh, the God who answers by fire, the God who speaks out of a whirlwind, the God who whispers in our ear. Yahweh, we lift up your name today. So this is the part of the service where, what did you hear? What did you see? And what did you sense? If the word was for you, let it be between you and the Lord. But if the word is for us, we need for you to share it. We need for you to share it. Ministers of the house, you already know. For those of you that don't, and this is your first time, we ask that you write down what the Lord has shown to you. Bring it up or send it up to the pulpit, and the prophetess and apostle will judge it. And so while you prepare yourself, the Lord says, my name is great. My name is so great that if you would surrender to me, I could change your name and make it great. Just like I changed Abraham's name, just like I changed Sarah's name, and just like I changed Jacob's name, I can change your name. But you say, God, if I surrender this thing to you, then I'll lose my identity. He said, but your identity is in me. He said, don't allow anybody to attach anything to you that I did not call you to be. He says, trust me, lay this thing down, and I promise you, when I change your name, you will be blessed. Just like I blessed Abraham, just like I blessed Sarah, and just like I blessed Jacob. Amen.
Praise the Lord, saints. I heard God say very clear that the cry to me was not in void. I have heard your cry. My ears are not too far away where I don't hear your cry. And God said, today I have spoken to your heart, and walk in what I have spoken to your heart. Amen.
Apostle saying, step out. I just heard this sound. Just heard that sound. And then the Lord showed me a big windshield where he was washing away. Hallelujah! Washing away. And you're stepping into the new. That's continually to be cleansed and walking into the new.
Amen.
While we're doing praise and worship afterwards, usually by nature I'm not the kind of person to confront someone. I'm pretty even keel, almost let things kind of get away with that passive aggressive a little bit, and not only get to the aggressive part, because it's something that I think I've inherited from my dad, but the Lord showed me something after praise and worship, something yesterday that I had done that was totally out of my nature. So I can know that it was what Apostle had said when he said, do something out of the norm, do something out of character for yourself. And yesterday was that first time that I have ever really did something out of character that was right to do. And it was once when we were at a restaurant, and another time with a neighbor, and I had to go there. Usually that's not my nature, but it was in love, and it may not have been a comfortable situation, but I had to address it. And I felt like today when you said that, Apostle, it was the confirmation God showed me. This is the time to start being bold and to start going out and doing those things in love and in the Spirit.
Amen.
Well, I was just sitting there because I didn't think I had anything. But the Spirit came to me and He said, break out. Break out. Spirit, break out. And that's what I heard.
I put here a few songs. I feel it's going in the Spirit. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve.
all the other names fade away. Let all the other names fade away. Place me in your church. Let all the other names fade away. Let all the other names fade away. Place me in your church. I'm the center of it all. Place me in your church. I'm the center of it all. Place me in your church. I'm the center of it all. Cry out my name. I'm the center of it all. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. What a powerful name it is. Nothing else compares to this. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. Let all the other names fade away. Place me in your church. Let all the other names. Place me in your church. Let all the other names fade away. Place me at the center. Place me where your troubles are. Place me where your depression is. Place me where you feel sick. Place me where you feel tired. Let all those sickness all that fade away. Put me at the center of it all. I'll handle it. Just put me at the center of it all. The crossfire, the bang bangs. Put me in the center of it all. And let me take care of it. Excuse me, I've already taken care of it. Praise the Lord. When I heard God said that you may be being attacked, and that Satan may be on your trail, the song that they sing, but you keep singing, all is well. No matter the attack, don't you turn back. No matter the attack, don't you turn back. And prophet, this is a word that I heard for you. It said, I heard the Lord say, you're still the roaring lion that was prophesied to you years ago. That the lion is still roaring when you or others may think it's not. And the prophecy that you got in way back when is still on the move. You may feel like you're fighting all alone and no one cares about what you say or think. They're not hearing what you say. The Lord says that the prophecy that Grady and Myrna said to you long ago at this church, that there's hundreds and thousands of prayer warriors and intercessors are up late nights and early mornings praying with you and for you. So keep the lion roaring, because ain't nothing, yes, I said ain't nothing going down but the devil. Yes, I said ain't nothing going down but the devil. The Lord said that his grace is sufficient for you, and his strength is made perfect in weakness. So keep roaring like a lion.
Amen. Praise the Lord, saints. It's something about that overflow. The Lord said the overflow is excess. But the excess is not for you. After he fills you, that excess spills over the brim. And that excess is for everybody that got your last name. It's for everybody that you work around. It's for everybody in your family. It's for everybody that's around you in every sector of every industry of your life. That's what the overflow is for, because what's going to happen is the overflow is going to spill over and it's going to touch everything around you. This is God's way of flooding the world. This is God's way of touching those that you can't get to. those that you've been praying for, those people that you've been giving you situations at work or at school or whatever it is that's going on, those people that's been provoking your flesh, that's been keeping you distracted from that walk, from that press, from that walking with the Spirit on a deeper, higher level, or a higher height or a deeper depth. That's what the overflow is for. We think the overflow is just for us, just give me more, more, more. But the more is for everybody that is in your life. That's what the overflow is for. And I just thank God for it, because now I see a picture. And God wanted me to share with you guys the overflow in His excess is not just for you. It's for all those that are around you. So when you remember that, and we take this back into our jobs, into our homes, into our families, we have that overflow on us for them. Somebody's life is going to be saved because you were overflowing with the Spirit and the presence of God. Amen? I don't know about you, but I thank God for that today. That overflow. It's something about that overflow. Amen?
I just hear God say that we've been made to endure for a night. But joy will come in the morning, and He is in control. So let Him be the controller of your life.
Amen. So God, we thank you for those words that have been written today, and now it's time for our announcements.
What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before Him. Heaven and earth adore Him.
Hallelujah. Prophet Sherry, you ready with our announcements?
Praise the Lord. These are our announcements. Supernatural Sunday will be June 2nd at 6:30 p.m. Invite others. Fasting and prayer every Wednesday at 6 p.m. United Prayer. Church meeting Sunday, May 26th is postponed. New Christ Community Anniversary today, May 19th at 3:30 p.m. Food at 1:30 p.m. Apostle will be speaking. Prophetess will be preaching at 4 at Reaching the World Ministry. That is located at 4063 West Pearson Road in Flint. Amen. Do we have any first-time visitors in the house today? Praise God, we're all family. We're back in the hands of the pulpit.
Well, first of all, we're so honored to have, govern yourself by the announcement, we're so honored to have a couple of our ministers to minister today, and we're just excited about that. Certainly, this makes sure that we are prepared to receive from the Lord today. An addendum, thoughts on a few of these line items on the announcement. The Supernatural Sunday is a time that we invite our family and friends to come out. And the truth be said that many of you are here, whether direct or indirectly, because of the prophetic encounter service now called Supernatural Sunday. Amen. Amen. So let's get others involved and on board. Listen, if we're an out-of-the-box ministry, okay? So, could you tell just like 10 minutes ago, and certainly this kind of Sunday, Supernatural Sunday, is the emphasis on the supernatural. So we certainly give way to the Spirit, and the word of prophecy gives us Spirit, that sort of thing. So it gives people an opportunity to come and experience and come and flow. Also, certainly want to talk about these meetings that's going to take place today. First, the meeting in Flint, and I guess it's Boss Lady something is the title.
It's Boss Lady Conference.
Boss Lady Conference, and these are...
Breaking old stronghold supernatural.
All right, breaking old stronghold supernatural. And so Prophetess is one of the keynote speakers, and let me just say that we'll be split because we're also at New Christ Community Church. So I've already appointed those of you, you know who you are, to be with Prophetess, and certainly we look for you to follow through on that and be a show for us and a support to her. And then the remaining of us, let's go and eat. Well, all of us can eat, of course, at New Christ Community Church. And then I look for your support with Apostle here in Saginaw at the New Christ Community, and that's at 3:30. So we'll be looking for you, and we thank you for your support in advance. Thank you.
Praise the Lord. I need that back, Pastor. I'll let that add that. Thank you, sir. That's very much. We have scripture of the month. Anybody ready for that? I know it's a new scripture. Oh, okay. So, quick draw. Let's do it.
Galatians 3:13. Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law. For it is written, he that hangs on a tree, he that is cursed.
All right. The helpmate stood up for you. She was going to help you now. All right.
Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, as it is written, cursed is everyone that hangs on the tree.
Amen. That's the word. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Corrine.
Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. It is written, curse every man that hanging on the tree.
Amen. Galatians 3:13. Anybody else? All right. Come on, T.
Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, curse is anyone that hangs on the tree.
Amen. Amen. Dave, you ready? Okay.
Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangs on a tree, that the blessings of Abraham may come upon the Gentiles.
Oh, wow. That's great. Amen. Amen. Prophet Bob, you got your
Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangs on the tree.
Amen. All right, so we're going to move on. Bless you guys. Thank you so much. Expound on that? No, sir. I'll allow you to. Those issue up.
All right. Certainly, we know who it was that was on the tree. In other words, another term for tree is cross. All right. Who's on the cross of the tree? Jesus. And so he accepted all the curse that came because of whose fall? Adam's fall and Eve's fall. All right. So all the curses was hung on him as he hung on the cross, and the blood of Jesus washed away all the sins, all the curses. So curse, poverty is a curse. Sickness is a curse. Mental illness is a curse. Amen. Failing complex, a curse. Low self-esteem, a curse. Poor self-image, a curse. Are y'all hearing me now? And we can keep going on and on and on. And Christ already did that for us, took all of that from us, so we can live in the overflow. Amen. Well, praise the Lord.
So before we move on, I just want you guys to know that it was Apostle's birthday, so I know he don't want to hear that, right? He don't want us doing that, but I'm sorry. But sometimes you just gotta take a beat, man. Just take the whooping. So everybody that sing happy birthday, Miyaka, you ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. And so don't be afraid to give him a Pentecostal handshake when it's all said and done. He'll take it, but he would be like, but anyway. Yes, somebody or prophets.
I took him out for his birthday Friday to Cracker Barrel.
Okay. Tostadas. Yeah, good. Honey, you better take notes now. Take notes. I want to eat good too. So it's offering time. It's offering time. And so we'll take up an offering for Apostle too as well. I know you don't want that. I know.
We need to raise it up. You know how we do it when we go to New Christ Community Church. So we'll have Melissa. We have a separate basket for New Christ Community Church. They are excellent givers. Can I have a little mic? Yes, they are. Yes. They are excellent givers, and so we're not in competition, but certainly we want to grace them with the favor that God has graced us with. All right? Amen. So we challenge you with $10 for them. We can get 15, 20 people with $10. That would be good. All right? And you can, at your own pleasure, any other time you want to give something to me, that's fine. But anyway, yeah. Okay, did we do that? And then right after the offering, we want to bless the little people before they go to their respective place. And this is something that the Lord's placed on prophets. We're going to anoint them and also release them to what God has for them. Okay?
Amen. So while you prepare your offering, I'm going to read the word. It'll come from Malachi 3:8. And the Bible reads, will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me, but ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? The tithes and offerings. Ye are cursed with the curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house. Prove ye not where is the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourers for your sake, and it shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. All the nations shall call you blessed, for ye shall be a delightsome land, saith the Lord of hosts. You write out a check, please make it out to Center of Attraction Outreach. We do have point of sale today. You can also give on Giveify under Center of Attraction Fellowship. Amen? Amen. All right, so if you would stand as we read our offering affirmation. You will please stand as we read our offering affirmation. Still got people preparing there. If you need an envelope, please raise your hands. Our ushers will be glad to serve you. All right, let's do our offering affirmation for those who can stand. As we give our tithes and offerings, we are believing you, Lord, for jobs and better jobs, raises and bonuses, benefits, sales and commissions, estates and inheritance, interest and income, rebates and returns, checks in the mail, healing and divine help, gifts and surprises, finding money, bills paid off, settlements, debts demolished, royalties received, scholarships and grants, contracts, money management, 100-fold return, according to your word, in Jesus' name. Please follow the directions of the ushers, please. Stretch your hands this way, Father God. We just give you praise and honor and give you thanks for giving us an opportunity to give. Lord, we ask that you bless those who desire to give but didn't have it. We ask that you return it to us with good measure, pressed down, shaken together. Make it run over, that men shall give into our bosom. And Lord, we just ask that our words and our offering will trumpet out and prophesy over our life, oh God. And we thank you for it in the mighty, matchless name of Jesus. Amen.
Before our speakers come up, we want to pray for the little ones. If they can come up now. Let's do that.
All the little children, teenagers.
Teenagers too. Just come on up front here. We're going to anoint you and then release you to your respective place of ministry. Amen. And we're going to give the mic to the prophetess so she can pray over you.
I saw this in the spirit and told Apostle that we need to anoint all the little ones. This is for a release of your purpose and destiny. The blessings of the Lord is going to come upon you. And the adults were already at the altar, but God said he was speaking to your hearts too. I think Minister Leon gave a prophecy on that, talking about that he has sealed these things in your heart. So we anoint you now in Jesus' name. We thank you that your footsteps are ordered of the Lord and none of them will slide. God will show you your purpose when you are in your mother's womb. You're not an accident. You're not a happenstance. You have a divine appointment and God has you here for a reason. And there's a purpose going to be released as you go back to your designer. Go back to God and he will show you why you are here, who you're supposed to touch, and what you're supposed to do in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. We thank you, God. None of their steps will slide. They are ordered by the Lord. Hallelujah. And anybody that will try to block or stop their purpose in life, we bind up that right now in Jesus' name and lose God's protection. We head other side. We pray ahead your thrones around them. Protect them, God. Jesus, build them things all around them in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. We thank you, Lord, for helpers that will help them along the way. Send that support system. Send the right mentors. Send the right coaches. Send the right people in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen and amen.
Amen. All right, young folks. I think we got children's ministry in the back. You guys are dismissed to go to children's ministry. And so we're going to have our first speaker come up. It's going to be Minister Mack.
Amen.
Amen. Come on up. Don't give me that look again. I'm going to tell everybody. She started. Praise the Lord. Stretch your hands this way. Father, we lift up Minister Mack today. God, we ask that you give her the words that we need here in this house, God. We ask that she decrease as you increase in her life, God. Let it not just be a good word, but a life-changing word that is applicable to our lives, oh God, that it will change us, that it will mold us, that it will break us and cause us to grow. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good morning. So our title, we're continuing on the teachings of the Holy Spirit, the supernatural. And I also want to pray before I get started. Lord, we thank you for this day, and we thank you that everyone who will hear your message today will open up their minds, hearts, and souls to your word, and let it bring them confirmation and truth. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So it's funny because I was asking Minister Marianne, what are we speaking on? And she was like, the Holy Spirit, supernatural. I'm like, what? I'm like, no, that's not my area. But I was like, okay, Lord. So me being a teacher gift, because I'm a teacher gift, I looked up the Holy Spirit, and I just started reading everything I could find on the Holy Spirit and what the Holy Spirit means to me. And what do you know? The Holy Spirit started showing me things He's already been doing in my life, and everything that I'm asking to find out about Him, He was like, you already know this. Yes. So my first question was, who is the Holy Spirit? And I found that in Genesis 1 and 2, and the word says, and I'm reading out the NIV. And the word says, now the earth was formless and empty, darkness over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And I'm thinking, okay, so the Holy Spirit was one of the three persons of God, God the Father, the Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit, He serves as God, as Christ present on earth. So I asked another question, what is His role in our lives as believers? And John 14:25 said, and this was Jesus speaking to His disciples. He said, all of this I have spoken while still with you. But the Counselor, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything that I have said to you. So the primary role of the Holy Spirit is that He bears witness of Jesus Christ. He tells people's hearts about the truth of Jesus Christ. The Holy Spirit also acts as a teacher. He reveals God's will and God's truth to the believer. So when a person becomes born again by believing and receiving Jesus Christ, God resides in that person through the Holy Spirit. He has intellect, emotion, and a will. As a person, because the Holy Spirit is a person, who thinks about us, He has emotions for us, He works and prays for us. So the Holy Spirit is a teacher. We know that He's a teacher, He's a helper, He's a guide. John 16:13 says, but when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you into all truth. He will not speak on His own. He will speak only what He hears. And He will tell you what is yet to come. He helps us to understand what we read. He gives us light on what we read. And He reminds us of the things we forgot that we read. Now, I wanted to give you a little story. I've been hearing the Holy Spirit ever since I was a little girl. Didn't know it was the Holy Spirit. Didn't know that it was God speaking to me. And I used to always tell God, I need a husband so He can help me go closer to you. And me not thinking on the terms that, you already hear the Holy Spirit. You just got to listen to what He says and be diligent and listen and do what he asks you to do. And so I thought having a human as flesh, which God did create us for companionship, but I thought having a husband would help me grow closer in God and be more of the woman that God called me to be. Now, during that time, I didn't know God called me for ministry. I just wanted to be closer to God and also wanted to have a husband for my son at the same time. But I did not realize that was the Holy Spirit leading and guiding me all those years until after I got married and went through ministry and then learned about the Holy Spirit. It was like, He's been with you from the beginning, but we forget in life, especially when we go through things and trials and tribulations, that the Holy Spirit is with us. He's also with unbelievers. Even though they don't believe, He's still there with them too. Amen. The Holy Spirit gives us power and strength and helps us in fighting against sin. The power of the Holy Spirit strengthens our will to endure in the process so we don't lose heart and lose faith. The process of life is hard. And we don't like the process because it's long and it's drawn out, and a lot of things happen that we don't like and we are uncomfortable with. But during that time, the Holy Spirit gives us the strength to endure. He reminds us God is with us. He never leaves us. He'll never forsake us. And that way, when we can stand and have faith and have heart, we can stand firm to the end. The Holy Spirit is also our interceder. And I found that in Romans 8:26. It says, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groans that words cannot express. The Holy Spirit takes what is from Jesus and declares it unto us. And a lot of times, that's where our speaking in tongues, we're edifying, our spirit man is connected with the Holy Spirit. We're praying for things that we don't know anything about. Sometimes we're praying for people that we have no clue we're praying for. And this is why we need to pray, need to learn how to speak in tongues. This is why speaking in tongues or edifying is so important, because you could be praying for not only your own children, some of your family members, somebody at your church, or people across the country. You never know. The Holy Spirit also gives gifts, spiritual gifts. And that's found in Corinthians 12:8 and 10. Words of wisdom, words of knowledge, faith, gifts in healing, working of miracles, prophecy, discerning of spirits, different kinds of tongues, interpretation of tongues, gifts of helps, and gifts of ministration. All of these gifts have been provided to equip us to glorify God for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, and for edifying of the body of Christ, till we all come into the unity of faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, unto a perfect man. This was found in Ephesians 4:12, 13, and 15. So the Holy Spirit also works with non-believers, as I said earlier. He convicts people's hearts of God's truth concerning how sinful we are and needing God's forgiveness, and how righteous Jesus is. The Holy Spirit tugs at our hearts and minds, asking us to repent and to turn to God for forgiveness and a new life. And He also tugs at our hearts as Christians too. I remember when I first got divorced, and I was really going through it, and I was angry all the time, and I was bitter. I won't say bitter, but I was, well, I guess it would be bitter, because I was always telling God, well, this happened and that happened, like He didn't know what happened in the marriage. And He would always wake me up in the middle of the night. He always liked to get you in the middle of the night, like first thing in the morning when sleep is really getting good, like about 3 o'clock in the morning. And then He'd wake you up and He'd start talking to you. And you'd be like, wait a minute, hold up. What time is it? And so that's when He always would hit me at 3 o'clock in the morning. And He'd wake me up and He'd be like, look, I need you to forgive your husband. And I'm like, what? Don't you remember what he did to me? And I would go back through the whole story of everything that happened like he don't know.
Yeah.
And he would say, look, you know, I need you to do this. And see, I thought he wanted me to do it for him, but it was actually for me. And so he kept on, and the Holy Spirit is so gentle, because we can be crazy as people. Or I'm just by myself. We can be really crazy as people. And we can do some crazy and dumb stuff. And I'm telling you, I've done some dumb stuff. And I thought I was justified in it because I was the victim, God. I'm the victim. And so I thought I was justified in the dumb things that I did. And the Holy Spirit didn't beat me up about it. You know, he just said, okay, he just comforted me, he loved on me, you know, but his thing was, okay, I'm going to let you have your time. He gave my grieving time, as he called it. And then he said, okay, enough grieving time is over, now let's go to work. And so as believers, he also tugged on our hearts, you know, especially when we have unforgiveness in our heart with one of our brothers and sisters, a family member. We've forgiven somebody. I had a lot of unforgiveness for different pastors and ministers because of the situation of how my divorce turned out. And so I didn't trust, I didn't want to be around. As a matter of fact, I had such a hatred, you know, and the Holy Spirit kept on tugging my heart. He said, that is not me. That is not the God in me, or that is not me, and that's not who you need to express. And so he kept tugging at my heart. Early mornings, he would always do that, you know, to give me, and I would always give in because I wanted to go back to sleep. Okay, God, whatever you want, you know, and he knows what to do to get what he needs, but he don't force himself. He is a gentleman. He don't force himself on you. He always go at your will, but he have to tug and push. You know how like Apostle does us ministers? Y'all listen to what I'm talking about. You know, Apostle be like, okay, you got your sermons, you need 10 sermons, you got them ready to go. You know, he pushes you. You will be like, no, I don't want to go. He'll push you. That's how the Holy Spirit, he's very gentle, but he'll push you, you know, until you're ready for that. And so he tugs on your heart and minds and for forgiveness. So the Holy Spirit also helps us learn God's character in our life by the fruits of the Spirit in a way that we cannot do on our own. The Holy Spirit will build into our lives love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And that self-control is, I mean, all of them, you need the Holy Ghost to practice those on a daily, but that's self-control because, you know, I always tell people, I say, hey, I'm from Flint. I'm Flint Town. We ain't scared of police. Don't take me there. Don't take me there. And say, God said, you can't be saying stuff like that. He represent me. He said, you can't be coming from you Flint Town. You ain't scared of no police. What's up? You know, that's me when I get mad. You know, and so I had to learn to be like, okay. And he said, if they give you a hard time or you have a problem, start praying for them. I'm like, I don't want to pray for them. I don't want to pray for them. I mean, I'm being honest. I tell God the truth. I don't want to pray for them. And he said 2 things can happen when you pray for them. He said their heart's going to change about you, you know, or they're going to remove themselves from a situation where you don't have to deal with them no more. And when I started doing that, I found that to be true. Yes. And so now I you know, use that every time. You know, if it's somebody give me a hard time, whether it's a supervisor, somebody at the grocery store, at home, wherever, church, I pray about it. You know, I'm giving them to God, I'm praying earnestly. Matter of fact, every time I think about them, because you know when you don't like a person, you think about them constantly. You give a lot of energy to that person. So every time you think about them, you just start, Lord bless them, bless their kids, bless their finances. And then you start seeing that those prayers become sincere. They don't be just out of just anger or you just being funny. God, I want you to just go break their leg, make them fall down the stairs or something. They become sincere prayers. And then they change. And, you know, and before you know it, you wake up one morning and they say, hey girl, how you doing? Come on, I'll take you lunch. I want to bless you with a seed. And you be like, God is set up, you know, you be thinking, but it's because of your sincere prayer. And that's where your self-control comes in. So through the work of the Holy Spirit, if we humble ourselves and we allow Him to work in us and through us, God can and He will be glorified. Amen.
I did not rush her off. She's trying to put up. Good job, Mr. Man. All righty. It's time for Minister Mary Ann. Amen. Woo! Mary Ann, as she comes up. Hey, mama. She got it in back. Hey. Stretch your hands this way. Father, we lift up Mary Ann before you, God. We ask right now, God, that you fill her mouth with what thus says the Lord. Let it be a life-changing word, God. Let her be sincere, oh God, and let supernatural power flow from her. And God, we just give you honor and glory for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Good afternoon. Woo! That's all I'm saying. You know, I have to get that first woo out, because if I don't, my voice will, my spirit just be jumping. So, and then it just explode, and then, so let me get that first, I got that first woo out, now I can continue. We're speaking on the Holy Spirit, but Lord Father God, as I come before your people, Lord Father God, give me the word, speak through me, Lord, your word, that I might bring forth edification, justification, and sanctification to your people. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, when I was sitting, when Apostle told us, and it was so much going on the last 2 weeks. Things was going on. The carpet was clean. The chairs had to be clean, and church anniversary. And I'm like, Lord, I got to make time for you. I said, but I need your strength to keep me going, but I got to make time for you, because I know what he had told me he wanted me to speak on. And I'm like, Lord, how do I find time? And, you know, staying in the house with Monique and Bailey, you know, the two comedians in my life. And it's like, whoo, Lord, help me, you know. So when they leave, I get a free moment, and I just take a deep breath. But then once I get that free moment, I take a deep breath. First thing I do, I fall asleep. So, but the Lord been speaking to me about it. As I've been sleeping, the Lord been speaking to me. So I praise God that we got a teaching pastor in Prophetess Leona, because she, not taking nothing away from Apostle, because Apostle had told me to get this Bible years ago. But I did not do it because at that time that Bible was over $100. I'm like, no, I can afford that Bible. So, but I was able to get it when I got it. It's a wealth of information. A wealth of information. So, right, what it is, here I go. The Holy Ghost / Spirit. There are 41 facts about the Holy Ghost and 96 about the Holy Spirit that is referenced in the Dates Bible. So if you don't have a Dates, invest in one now that they're a little bit, they're a little bit less expensive. Please get the big letter, because I tell you, you can see everything. But let's start with the first mention, Genesis 1 and 2. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the water. First mention. When I looked at that, I said, wow, God was there in the beginning. The Spirit of God was there in the beginning. The Spirit of God was there in the beginning. Yes. Come on. Yes. I can't do this. And so I said, okay, Lord, continue to reveal to me what you want. Then I went back to my notes, and I seen that Apostle had broke out and said that
God is the commander, Jesus is the producer, and the Holy Spirit is the enforcer. So I said, wow. I mean, you know, it's nice to take good notes because you get, and things be brought back to your remembrance when the Holy Spirit starts speaking to you. So in the Old Testament, God spoke directly to his servants, Moses, Noah, Abraham. But the Holy Spirit spoke also, and he spoke to other people. And when I went through the Old Testament, in Judges 6:34, he spoke to Gideon. He came upon Gideon. He said, but the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet. He blew a trumpet. So the Spirit of the Lord gave him a breath, like no other breath he could do. And he blew that trumpet, and he sounded that trumpet, and it just made the noise that permeated all the way through the land. I said, God, you are awesome. Then in Ezekiel, he said, I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will be careful to obey and observe my ordinances. So he puts the Spirit in us. And I always believe that when you take your first breath, because of what he did for Adam, when he breathed upon Adam, when we take our first breath as a baby, we are receiving the breath of the Holy Spirit. Now your will and your emotions go play into that, but you take in that first breath of the Holy Spirit. You say, ah, and you start hollering. All right, so here it is. But in the New Testament, after the death of Jesus, God sent the Spirit as a direct link to himself. We didn't have to go through the Pharisees, and he rented the curtain and made access to him available to everyone. He said, and then Jesus told his disciples in John 14:16 that the Father will give you a helper and that he may be with you forever. Wow. And in that one verse, we read about the Trinity of God. God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Because he says, my Father will send you a helper. Jesus is speaking. And he said, my Father will send you a helper, which is the Holy Spirit. So we see the Trinity right there. So, now back to these 41 facts. He came and he was found with child. And we know that's with Mary and Matthew. He's baptized with. There's several scriptures for that. Can be blasphemed. I didn't detail any of these out, but a few. Equal in authority with the Father and the Son in water baptism. Speaks through men. Fills men. Comes upon you. Can descend in bodily form. Now see that? That's awesome. Men can be full of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit teaches you. It is given to all believers. Now I expounded on this one because in John 7, 37, 39. If any man, underline any man, may thirst, let him come unto me and drink. Any man of any race, of any generation, can experience the living waters of the Holy Spirit. It's available to everyone. Yes. All you got to do is ask, because as Minister Matt said, it's a gift. Hey, it's a gift. So hey, woo! I mean, it's awesome that we have gifts that all we have to do is ask. I mean, you know, you think about your children and you say, Daddy, I want this, Mama, I want this, and Daddy, I want more of the Holy Spirit. Hey, I want more of you. Rain on me, rain on me. It says first. I forgot what it said. It says there are conditions of receiving the Spirit. You got to be thirsty. As a desert craves water, our soul thirsts for more of God. Amen. It says, come unto me. You got to completely surrender. Doesn't cost you nothing. And you know what I thought of? You know that Ashford and Simpson song, Don't Cost You Nothing? Yeah. It don't cost you nothing. Nothing. Drink to receive the gifts the fruit of the Spirit, the operations of the Spirit. And it speaks on that, and everyone knows Galatians and where you can get this information from. Believe and receive. How many times have we heard this? Believe to receive, believe and receive. You can receive it if you believe it. This is for the believers. We sitting here as believers should be filled to the brim, to the overflow, showing it out like brother said to everybody that does it. So that brings me to a story. I was sitting, the Holy Spirit had been speaking to me about my brothers and sisters. And we get along, don't get me wrong, but we have our moments, as brothers and sisters do. And they're quite stubborn. They're really quite stubborn. And so he said, I want you to send them tapes, CDs, things that we get here in churches, pamphlets and things. I said, Lord, that's going to cost me a fortune in postage. Because everyone don't have a cell phone, that can be. I said, that's going to cost me a fortune. He said, I didn't ask you that. He said, I didn't ask you that. I said, do. I said, okay. That's how when he said, when I do my little complaining, he said, he responded, and I said, okay. So I've been sending them, I've been making a copy of The Bruises of Satan. And I have been sending this to them every month since I retired. I've been sending it to them. After I read it on the cruise in December, I started sending it to them because I found issues that we had in our family. So when I started sending it to them, I'm like, here we go, being human in my flesh. Nobody called me. Nobody ain't said they got it. Nobody ain't said this. Lord said, you ain't looking for no adoration. You doing what I told you to do. I said, okay. So I said, okay, that's all I said. I goes to Detroit for my nephew's open house. And my brother came to me and he said, keep sending me that. He said, I needed that. He said, I needed that. And then another brother called and said, woo! I said, what you hollering for? He said, Marianne, he said, I couldn't even see it. He said, I was blind in one eye because I had a bad retina, a blood vessel bust in my eye. He said, but you know what? I put a patch on my eye and started reading. He said, and then my other eye started coming back in the form. I said, you have to shout, you have to do what the Holy Spirit tells you to do because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who you're going to help. You don't know what's going to manifest. Positive. It ain't nothing negative. It's always positive. Woo! And that's why we holler. Sometimes he said, I love when Pastor said, take out the grave clothes. Because you know what? I love shouting. I love shouting. I love praising. I love yelling to my top of my lungs. Hallelujah. Because the Lord has been good to me. And I love praising the Lord. I love giving him, because you know what? If it wasn't for him, where would I be? Hallelujah. Now back to these 46. The Holy Spirit has been sent. The Holy Spirit can be received. The Holy Spirit gives commandments. The Holy Spirit is promised. The Holy Spirit is a gift. He can be lied to. I didn't even want to go into that because I'm like, ooh, but I did read that scripture. And it's in Acts 5:3. Can you bring that up for me? He said, I said, lied to. Because I said, when I started looking at him, I said, lied to. And then when I read it, I said, what? Wow. Woo. I said, praise God. The Holy Spirit bears witness. The Holy Spirit can be resisted. Acts 7:51 says, stiff-necked and uncircumcised and hardened ears, do you always resist the Holy Ghost? Wow. Resisting. And then, like I said, you complain that you don't have this. You complain that I ain't been there. You complain that things ain't happening my way. My sister called me yesterday complaining. I'm like, girl, if you don't get off my phone, I can't hear this. Because I'm like, why are you complaining? I said, Prophet gave me a book, 101 Wisdom Keys. The first one came up. I ain't never got past that one because you know what? I'm still eating on that one. Why you complain about what you allow to permit? Woo! I'm still eating on that. I haven't even got to the second key because that key still is sitting there, still going on and on because we complain about what we allow to permit. The Holy Spirit told you to go left, you go right. He said go down there, you go up there. Why do we continue to resist? Oh my Lord. The Holy Spirit can be given by the laying on of hands. The Holy Spirit brings comfort. So I wrote this down. So the church throughout all Judea, Saginaw, and Galilee, Michigan, and Samaria, United States, enjoyed peace, building up, and going on the fear of the Lord, and in the comfort of the Holy Spirit. It continues to increase. We got to continue to increase. I've been looking at the news about these states changing their mind on the abortion law. I'm like, Lord, you working it out. All we can do is keep praying. Keep praying, keep praying. The Bible said pray without ceasing. Pray without ceasing. If you want something to manifest, you got to pray for it. You got to step up, step out, like Pastor said, step up, step out, and walk on it. Get out the boat. That's it. He told me a long time ago, get out the boat and walk on the water. Well, I got a little fearful. I sank, looked up, down, got back in the boat. I'm not going to tell you I did not. But this year, I'm getting out the boat again. I'm going to start walking on the water. I'm going to start doing the things that I have been promised that I can walk into. And I'm going to walk it out. I'm going to walk it out. I can't do this in fear no more. Fear has got to go away. Fear is not our friend. You got to take fear and say, and spit it out. It's like phlegm in your throat. You crack him up and spit him out. I thank you. Hallelujah. I love giving God praise and honor. The kids that Monica Bennett tell you, I walk around there, hallelujah, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Speaking in tongues. Hey, shake in my life. Hey, you got to do it. You got to do it. Because like Minister Knight said, you don't know who you're praying for. What you're praying for. You just got to do it. You got to do it. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I'll be in my car just going down the road, throwing up hands, speaking in tongues. I'm not looking at you. I'm not looking at what you think. I'm not looking at what you say. I'm doing what the Lord told me to do. Hey, hallelujah. The Holy Spirit gives anointing and power. The Holy Spirit falls upon men. The Holy Spirit can be poured out. The Holy Spirit sends missionaries. The Holy Spirit makes decisions when we can't make them. Well, think about that. Think about that. He keeps you from making wrong decisions. And when you make the wrong decision, he guides you back to make the right decision. Because you know you ain't going nowhere when you ain't did what you were supposed to do and you did it wrong. You ain't getting nowhere. You think you're going to profit? I don't think so. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. The Holy Spirit directs ministers. Hallelujah. For the Holy Spirit keep directing me in the path I shall go. Thank you, Lord. Yeah. The Holy Spirit makes overseers. Hallelujah. Thank you for our overseers, Lord Father God, because where would we be without them? Hallelujah. The Holy Spirit gives peace and joy. For the kingdom of God is not eating and drinking, but righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. The joy of the Lord is our strength. Yeah. Woo! Look at that warm blanket just covering you, giving you peace and joy. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, the Holy Spirit sanctifies. The Holy Spirit dwells in men. The Holy Spirit approves men. The Holy Spirit communes with men. The Holy Spirit inspired the gospel. The Holy Spirit gives gifts. The Holy Spirit is partakers of. The Holy Spirit gives men to be partakers of himself. The Holy Spirit makes known by figure. The Holy Spirit can move men. The Holy Spirit is one in unity with both the Father and the Son. And this is one when I read it, I said, Lord, I thank you. The Holy Spirit helps in prayer. In the same way, the Spirit also helps in our weakness, where we do not know how to pray as we should. But the Holy Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. Lord, I thank you because I get a little confused at times because I'm not sure what I should be praying for. But I walk around there and hallelujah, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it, and I do it quite often at my house. I be walking around, and that's what I be doing, and I be Miyagi can play something on there on the music keyboard, and I'm just like, ooh, yes. Ain't no words there, but hallelujah. And I'm like, it touches my spirit, so I know that the Spirit is there. You know, I know that he's there. Because like we were doing it, I'm like, woo, woo. I don't know what I'm praying for, but I know it was there. He said, but you, beloved, building yourselves up on your most holy faith, praying in the Holy Spirit. We constantly, I don't go to the bathroom. Hallelujah. When I take my medicine. Lord, I'm working on my bathroom. Hallelujah. What I need to do, Lord, Father God. What color do you want me to do? Hallelujah. I'm listening to you. Because I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. I got a dream. I'm getting some woodworking. I don't care. I've been wanting to do that since I was in elementary school. I'm going to find me somebody going to teach me a woodworking skill. Because I'm going to learn to make me a dining room table. I want a dining room table. And I'm going to learn to make me a dining room table. I got the glass. All I need is to stand. I'm going to make something. Amen. I'm serious. I'm serious. Holy Spirit to come upon you. Hallelujah. And I'm believing. I'm believing and I'm receiving. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. The Lord directs our path. We must never lean to our own understanding. We should always acknowledge the God our Father. Yes. We should believe in Jesus, his Son, and know that the Holy Spirit is there to give us the comfort that we need. He will always lead us, guide us. He gives us wisdom. He teaches us. He directs us. He reveals his plan. And all this work is through the Holy Spirit. Even when we think we know what's best for our lives. And like John 14:16 says, howbeit me, when he, the Holy Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you to all truths. Yes. For he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that he shall speak, and he will show you of things to come. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, Mama. Woo!
Praise the Lord. Well, we will take up offering for these young ladies. We already did that, or okay, great, praise the Lord. Okay. Well, did you want me to do a benediction real quick, or
anybody wants to be saved?
Absolutely.
Anybody? I had a comment before we close. Due to the time of the prophetic gifts, I didn't say anything because so many people were speaking. But the Lord had me doing a combine, hold this for a minute, like this. I don't know if you saw me doing that. And he was telling me that it was like a windmill, like that thing that flows to create power. In every believer, there's the Holy Ghost power. It's in the inner man. And Dr. Hammond has a book out on 70 reasons why you should pray in tongues. And you see, we got that combine in us, the power, the generators in us. And when we be praying, pray the Holy Ghost like Mary Ann said. God will show you. Everybody begin to pray the Holy Ghost. Speak, Lord, your servant here. Speak to our hearts, oh God. Let there be an overflow of power. You shall receive power.
Hallelujah. So if you need the Lord in your life, and you're not born again, this is your opportunity to come and receive the Spirit of the living God, the very one that we've been ministering about, the very operator, the enforcer of the Godhead. So if that's you, we're going to ask you to come on up. If you say, but I've been born again, I just need a refreshing, I just need to renew what I've already have done, and you just want to rededicate your life to the Lord, if that's you, you can come on up. And if you want to be a member of this ministry, say, I don't have a church home, but I like what's going on here. I've been sitting out there for a while to make sure things is what I thought it was. That's what we did. And so if that's you, you can come on up as well. Amen. That's you, come on up. All right. All hearts and minds are clear. We all family. Everybody's born again. We're going to do the benediction. Everybody can please stand. For benediction. And that'll come from Numbers, chapter 6, verse 24 through 26. And the Bible reads, the Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord makes his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Go in peace. Hope somebody tell them that you love them, and let Jesus be the center of your attraction. Amen.